The Taj Mahal, this 400-year-old monument, needs a facelift in less than a year. Tasked with the job, an army of government employees. But will notorious Indian bureaucracy get in the way?
We never allow anybody to work fast.
We don't believe in quantity.
In a complex the size of 40 football fields, where grimy domes have to sparkle once more, a garden needs to bloom out of season, and crumbling stonework has to be repaired. Is there any chance that these critical works will be finished in time for the Commonwealth Games? It's India's best-known monument and the most famous mausoleum in the world. The Taj Mahal, icon of a nation, symbol of an emperor's undying love for his empress. Its very name evokes grandeur, beauty, and romance, with few man-made structures as universally recognized. But this is a 21st century story about a 17th century fairy tale palace in a state of disrepair, where the heroes are scientists and archaeologists who face daily battles against modern-day evils, acid rain and marble cancer, diesel fumes and other poisonous gases, eating away at its 400-year-old walls. Now, the Indian government is hosting the Commonwealth Games. These daily battles are increasingly urgent, as the team has to have the Taj Mahal in pristine shape by October the 1st. Stonemasons will replace a number of carefully carved sandstone pillars and repair intricate marble inlay work. The ASI, or Archaeological Survey of India's chemical branch, will clean one of 3 domes on top of the mosque, beside the Taj Mahal's famous mausoleum. And the horticulture department must plant hundreds of fruit trees and flowers to help the monument look its best for the expected influx of foreign visitors. Is there any chance of getting the work done in time? Or is this challenge just too monumental? Delhi is hosting the Commonwealth Games. And at the start of the year, preparations are in full swing around the fast-paced capital. As a developing country of over 1 billion people, what India lacks in construction technology, it makes up for with manpower. And with the influx of visitors the Games will attract from around the world, the international spotlight will be focused on the nation. Increased tourist figures are expected to spill over to other parts of the country, with the Taj Mahal in Agra, its most popular foreign attraction, anticipated to draw unprecedented numbers. At the offices of the Archaeological Survey of India, the district superintending archaeologist, Dr. Siddiqui, has gathered his team of experts ahead of this event. R.K. Dixit is chief conservator of India's most famous monument. But conservation is just one of the many areas he covers. Media attention surrounding the Taj Mahal is mounting, and it's not flattering.
दीक्षित साहब, कुछ हमारे पास खबरें आ रही हैं अखबार के ज़रिए से भी और कुछ लेटर्स भी आए हैं हमारे पास दिल्ली से कि ताजमहल का जो मेंटेनेंस है वो अप टू द मार्क नहीं हो पा रहा है। उसकी क्या वजह है, आप कुछ बताएंगे उसमें?
सर, ऐसा है कि हम लोगों का पूरा प्रयास मोनूमेंट के मेंटेनेंस के ऊपर लगा रहता है, लेकिन साहब मीडिया के अंदर क्या है कि ये मतलब मीडिया अपने हिसाब से उसको बताना चाहती है। देखिए, इतना बड़ा साहब कैंपस है और ये कंजर्वेशन वाला काम कोई मतलब हम लोग मतलब क्वालिटी देते हैं, हम लोग क्वांटिटी नहीं देते हैं। ये सर ऐसा है कि कोई पीडब्ल्यूडी की कोई सड़क नहीं है कि अब 3 दिन में साहब सड़क बना दें।
ओके, तो आप कॉमनवेल्थ गेम के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से कर ही रहे काम, थोड़ा उसको और स्पीड अप कीजिए ताकि अक्टूबर तक हो जाए।
The Taj Mahal sees up to 20,000 visitors a day. But this number is expected to double during the upcoming Games. And for Dr. Siddiqui and his colleagues, this means even more pressure on an overstretched budget. The daily onslaught of devotees at the Taj Mahal has taken its toll. And after nearly 400 years, the damage is getting worse each year. With the prospect of yet more visitors during the Games, will the world's most celebrated monument to love crumble under the pressure? The Taj Mahal's total annual budget is just $200,000, which already has to support the army of attendants, gardeners, craftsmen, and cleaners who look after the monument on a daily basis. Over the course of a year, an unprecedented amount of work is planned, and employees on all levels at the ASI will be pushed to the limit. The Taj Mahal represents the ultimate in excellence and perfection, and visitors come with high expectations. So to deliver less than that would be nothing short of a disaster. Foreign tourists currently account for less than a tenth of the Taj Mahal's annual visitors, but these numbers have been rising steadily. The mausoleum complex, designed as a Persian chahar bagh, or four-part garden, covers almost 2.5 million square feet, the size of over 40 football fields. With red sandstone structures dotted around the central tomb. All these areas are vulnerable to decay. 36-year ASI veteran R.K. Dixit is the man charged with monitoring all conservation work. And for him, it's critical that the monument's integrity be preserved.
आप एक तो इसकी पैनल की ड्राइंग बनाना है ना, उसकी ड्राइंग में जितने पीसेज हैं उसकी एक अलग अलग बना लेना, लेकिन जो हमारा जो कंजर्वेशन का वर्क है, भारतीय पुरातत्व सर्वेक्षण का जो वर्क है, ये हमारा बिल्कुल मैचिंग टू दी ओरिजिनल होता है. इसमें हम क्वालिटी का विशेष ध्यान रखते हैं.
The dome, believed by Muslims to be the most perfect shape in the world, was designed by Turk Ismail Afandi and is surrounded by a marble platform measuring almost 9,000 square meters. But keeping the Taj Mahal's famous facade a pristine white, amidst frequent complaints from the public, has been a preoccupation of the ASI's science department for almost 3 decades. But that's not this department's only task. Flanking the famous tomb are the substantial red sandstone buildings of the mosque and the assembly hall. This year, the marble domes of the mosque have been earmarked for cleaning. Strong desert winds make the job especially hazardous. After testing various options, the archaeological chemists in charge of the procedure have placed their faith in a substance so mild that it can be mixed by hand. Fuller's earth treatment. But while this work is normally carried out during dry winter months, it's been scheduled to begin in the middle of the monsoon, due to the looming October deadline. And while the monsoon poses a threat to the scientists, the gardeners of the Taj Mahal actually need the rain. Described as the heart of the complex, the garden is to the buildings what the soul is to the body. For the Commonwealth Games, the team plans to fill the gardens of the Taj Mahal with scented flowers and fruit trees. Mr. Sharma is the head of the Kane Alam Nursery and a 30-year veteran of the horticulture department at the ASI. He and his award-winning team of 25 supply the seedlings whose blooms fill the area surrounding the world's most famous tomb with life. But after successive years of drought on this hot, dry North Indian plain, keeping plants alive here is a daily struggle.
अभी मई जून में तो इतना तेज गर्मी हो गई, चिड़ियाँ तक गिर जाती हैं, बेहोश हो गए, इतनी हीट होती है. तो ये प्लांट्स ही बचाना मुश्किल होता है. अब देखिए ओपन में है ये, अब सुबह शाम इसमें वाटरिंग करते हैं, इरिगेशन करते हैं, तब भी वो 1 घंटे में सूख जाता है पूरा.
And while lack of rain is threatening the ability of the gardening team to meet their deadline, for another group of workers, it's a blessing in disguise. Around the complex, colonnaded galleries of red sandstone offer shade from the scorching Indian sun. But after centuries of human traffic, corrosion has taken its toll on the soft stone, weakening it to sometimes dangerous levels. No one can risk a collapse. On top of the danger list are the arched walkways of the glass house near the western entrance. They were once guest quarters for royal visitors. A team of skilled masons from the neighbouring state of Rajasthan will pair the muscle needed to work with heavy blocks of stone with the delicate skill required to carve the exquisite geometric and floral patterns typical of Islamic art. But is this burden too heavy, even for them? For the team at the Taj Mahal, deadlines are encroaching from all sides. But at the ASI, nobody rushes.
इस कंजर्वेशन के काम की कोई सीमा नहीं होती है. हमारा जो मेन उद्देश्य होता है वो होता है कि हम आपको क्वालिटी दें. We don't believe in quantity. तो ये इसकी कोई समय सीमा नहीं है. इसका कोई टाइम नहीं है. ये डिपेंड करता है कि हमारी क्वालिटी कितने दिन के अंदर आ जाती है.
With a philosophy that seemingly goes against the immediate need for fast results, will the three teams, stonemasons, the chemical department and gardeners working for the ASI, be able to meet their deadlines? At the Taj Mahal in India, teams of scientists, gardeners and stonemasons are racing to prepare the monument for the influx of extra tourists expected to attend the Commonwealth Games. Already a major tourist destination, the Taj Mahal owes much of its enduring appeal to the dramatic love story behind its construction. It was built between 1631 and 1658 by the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan as a tomb for his favourite wife, Mumtaz Mahal, the chosen one of the palace, who died in childbirth at the age of 38. Driven by grief, the Shah devoted himself to his monument to love. Never had India seen such grandeur, with jade and crystal from China, turquoise from Tibet, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. In total, 43 types of gems were used to decorate it, embellishing gold from Lahore, blue-grained marble from Jodhpur, and locally mined red sandstone. The Taj Mahal is 76 meters higher than the city of Agra, so a special road ramp stretching for 16 kilometers through the city was constructed. Post and beam pulleys worked by men and mules raised blocks up to the site, and over 20,000 men labored for 17 years to build the complex. Inside is a false central tomb, below which Mumtaz is buried. The minarets of the Taj Mahal are believed to have been built tilting outwards slightly, so that if they collapse, they wouldn't damage the 61-meter-high dome, which is held aloft by 4 eight-sided towers. Contrary to popular belief, this famous dome and its mausoleum are not made of solid marble. Behind 15-centimeter thick marble tiles is a building constructed out of locally fired clay Lakhari bricks, named for the Indian lakh, a measurement denoting 100,000. The marble was fixed onto these using thick lime mortar and then reinforced with iron dowel rods and clamps. As the most visible aspect of the Taj Mahal, particular attention is paid to its marble. This year, it's not the great dome of the main mausoleum receiving attention, but one of 3 domes on the mosque building by its side. And while marble cleaning usually takes place during the cool, dry winter months, because of the deadline, it's got to be done during monsoon. Precarious work, it cannot be rushed.
अभी आप देख रहे हैं कि यहाँ पर केमिकल कंजर्वेशन का काम चल रहा है, क्लीनिंग का काम चल रहा है. उस क्लीनिंग में आपने देखा मस्जिद के डोम के ऊपर काम चल रहा है. उस इसके फोल्डिंग में मैक्सिमम हमारे 10 आदमी से ज़्यादा खड़े नहीं हो सकते हैं, क्योंकि इतनी हाइट पर स्पेस नहीं है.
While Dr. Dixit oversees general conservation at the Taj Mahal, chemical work at the dome requires specialized scientific know-how. N.K. Samathia, who leads the ASI's science department in Agra, has come to the mosque to supervise this work, known as Fuller's Earth treatment. The method uses natural clays to suck dirt off the marble's surface.
This is the Fuller's Earth, and this is a kind of clay, natural clay, and chemically it is refined hydrated aluminium silicate. It works on the principle of adsorption. It sucks whatever incrustations are on the marble surface, which dull the appearance of the marble. It extracts or it adsorbs whole of the thing. from the marble surface.
Safe and effective, experts at the Taj have been using Fuller's earth treatment since 1983. However, it's only this year that they're using it on one of their domes for the first time.
Consistency ठीक है इसकी अब ठीक है ये तो अब तैयार हो गया आपका लगाने के लिए ठीक है और लोगों को बुला लो और इसको स्टार्ट कर दो लगाना As you see, sliperiness of this mud, it is not going to harm. It has no abrasive effect on the marble surface. It is non-corrosive, non-abrasive. Very safe method for marble.
Fuller's earth treatment starts with the mixture being smeared onto the marble tiles using soft brushes. The translucent blue-veined marble used all over the Taj Mahal was sourced from the Makrana region of Jodhpur in the neighbouring state of Rajasthan. In contrast to other marbles, it does not yellow, and due to the low porosity of this prized rock, its shine is said to increase with time. Once it's been applied, the mud pack is covered with polythene sheets to slow the drying out process. There's no guarantee that the clay will absorb all the dirt the first time around. With overall responsibility for conservation at the Taj Mahal, Dr. Dixit keeps a sharp eye on proceedings.
उसमें जो हम मड पैक लगाते हैं उस मड पैक के लिए हमको कम से कम 1 हफ्ते इंतजार करना पड़ता है उसके बाद उसका रिएक्शन देखना पड़ता है उसके बाद फिर दोबारा से अगर आवश्यक होता है तो फिर दोबारा मड पैक लगाया जाता है तो समय की कोई हमारे यहाँ सीमा नहीं है हमारे यहाँ काम जो है कंजर्वेशन के जो प्लान के होते हैं वो 4-4, 5-5 साल तक चलते रहते हैं
But while Dr. Dixit may prefer for conservation to take between 4 and 5 years, the deadline is in less than 5 months. And with a process that relies on drying, high humidity could set the work back by weeks. This treatment is critical because with industrialization, modern pollutants are harming the marble. Outside the peaceful confines of the Taj Mahal complex, Agra is a typical Indian city developing at breakneck speed. Despite the Indian government's attempts to move pollution-causing industries away from the area surrounding the monument, the region remains resolutely industrial. Fumes from diesel and petrol-fueled vehicles clog the air. And this is exacerbated by an unpredictable power supply, resulting in diesel-powered generators that kick in when electricity from the grid is cut. Fortunately, the chemical branch team does not need to face these trials alone. In a tower on the northeastern corner of the complex is the ASI's Air Pollution Monitoring Lab. Here, a daily record is made of the amount of harmful gases and tiny microscopic particles and droplets in the atmosphere around the monument. The team of technicians is led by chemist D. Banerjee.
ये पार्टिकल्स जो भी एक्टिविटीज़ हमारे आसपास होती हैं चाहे वो इंडस्ट्रियल हो चाहे वो मतलब मैन मेड हो जो भी हो उसके साथ हमारे ये और मतलब मेनली तो ये सॉइल डस्ट होता है तो ये सॉइल डस्ट क्योंकि सॉइल डस्ट ही मतलब एम्बिएंट जो मतलब एयर में है और प्लस जो इंडस्ट्रियल एक्टिविटीज़ के साथ जो भी इनऑर्गेनिक और ऑर्गेनिक मैटर है वो सस्पेंडेड पार्टिकुलेट मैटर के रूप में आता है तो इसको हम कलेक्ट कर लेते हैं
Over 8-hour blocks, high-volume samplers suck air through special filters to determine the concentration of dirt in the environment. At the end of each shift, the glass fibre sheets are blackened with grime sifted from the atmosphere around the Taj complex. The air is sampled 24 hours a day, every day of the year.
तो ये और ज़्यादा मतलब इस पे सस्पेंडेड पार्टिकुलेट मैटर होते हैं क्योंकि वहाँ उस समय सॉइल डस्ट बहुत उड़ती है नॉर्थ इंडिया में डस्ट लिडन विंड्स होती हैं तो पूरा फिल्टर पेपर ही काफ़ी सॉइल ओरिएंटेड मैटर होता है उसके अंदर उसका रंग जो है थोड़ा ब्राउनिश होता है
Over the last 5 years, ASI records have shown that levels of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide have fallen. Suspended particulate matter, SPM, however, remains high. To further reduce pollution, no diesel or petrol-driven engines are allowed inside the Taj complex or within 500 meters of it. For visitors who can't face the half-kilometer walk to the entrance, electric buses, horse carts or rickshaws are available. To help combat local pollution, even the ASI is doing its bit. Bullock carts are used to transport heavy material throughout the massive gardens. A three-strong team of bullocks holds a special place in the hearts of the workers at the ASI and is seen as very much part of the family.
इसको तो जिस तरीके से गवर्नमेंट अपना कर्मचारी को फैसिलिटी देती है ना, उसी प्रकार से इसको भी फैसिलिटी दी जाती है। 18,000 रुपये हमारे को मिलता है तो 8,000 रुपये महीने इसको खाने को मिलता है गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से।
Although some electric mowers are available, power supply is limited. So bullock-drawn grass cutters, the ultimate in green technology, are still used extensively in the more hard-to-reach areas of the Taj complex. It takes 3 days to mow the lawn on the banks of the Yamuna River to the north of the complex. At other times of the year, manual labour is relied on. Grass as cattle fodder is a valuable commodity that villagers who live around the Taj are reluctant to pass up. These processes have become a bit of an attraction in themselves. And while tourists enjoy some of the horticulture department's more colourful processes, behind the scenes at the Khane Alam nursery, Mr. Sharma and his team of gardeners are under more than the usual amount of pressure. They have to supply plants ahead of the normal planting schedule.
लिली के जो फूल खिल चुके हैं और हाल की हाल उनके जो बल्ब मल्टीप्लाई हो गए ना, अलग अलग कर लेना इसी सीजन में, ताकि वो भी बढ़ जाएगा। ठीक है सर, ठीक है ना। हाँ, और खाना खाने के बाद तुरंत लग जाना, जो मैंने बताया वही कर लेना काम पूरा। और फिर पानी वगैरह कैरियों में चलाना वो चलाओ, ठीक है ना। उसको समय अपने काम को बांट लो, किसी काम बहुत पिछड़ गया है, इसको जल्दी करो।
With yet another hot summer, irrigation is an ongoing problem. The water used in the nursery is pumped from the polluted Yamuna River below.
River water we are using, it's a very dirty water. But its pH value is normal. But we are using water from boring in Taj. That is very hard water, saline water.
In recent years, the water table around the drought-stricken area has depleted to alarming levels. With the high salt content of well water used for irrigation at the Taj, the plants in the gardens suffer and have to be replaced frequently. But the gardeners are relying on the monsoon, with no sign of its rains anywhere near the Taj Mahal. If it doesn't rain soon, Mr. Sharma and his team will have no chance of meeting their October deadlines. With urgent deadlines looming, the gardeners at the Taj Mahal are praying for rain, while members of its chemical branch are fervently hoping it will remain dry. While beloved in India, the Taj Mahal is an Islamic monument, and its history has become entwined with the 21st century threat of terrorism. Mughal power in Agra waned almost immediately following the death of Shah Jahan, builder of the Taj Mahal in the 17th century. His sons feuded, and ultimately the monument was plundered by local Hindu militants. They sold off its riches and left the buildings and gardens to become decayed and overgrown. Although it no longer boasts gold and gemstones, the Taj Mahal is lovingly maintained today, and its security is more stringent than ever. Many visitors still arrive at the gates with prohibited items in their possession.
Hello, sir. This tripod not allowed inside. Keep in locker, please.
Divide it in locker room. I'm not going to come back and stand in line. No problem. Why don't you keep it up?
Sir, please, you come this way.
Where?
Just keep in locker.
Where is the locker?
Locker near a ticket counter, you should grab. Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Please, you come. Please, you come. After come back, you collected from me.
Okay, thank you.
The restrictions aren't always understood or appreciated by visitors.
इसी तरह होता है बेटे यहाँ. अब बताइए कितना जिम्मेवारी ले सकते हैं हम किसी के आइटम की. ये प्रॉब्लम्स आती हैं हमारे सामने.
Today sees two visitors with more than the usual assortment of gear. With laser scanner in tow, Duncan Lees and his assistant Joseph Seven are experts in high-tech surveying. Duncan and Joseph are going to measure the precise dimensions of the famous monument using lasers.
The laser scanner looks deceptively simple, but inside it there's a complex piece of technology. What the laser scanner does is send out a beam of light, a laser beam, which rebounds off the building and creates three-dimensional coordinates, highly accurate three-dimensional coordinates. As it moves across, it builds up a 360-degree complete survey of everything that you can see.
The pair will create a 3D image of the Taj Mahal by systematically setting up at various points around the complex.
The reason that we move the scanner around to different places is because the laser can only capture information on surfaces that it can see from this position. That means there are some areas that we can't see from this one position, and that's why we have to move around the Taj to make sure that we get all of the areas surveyed. Then we bolt them all together using survey grid technology, and that allows us to have a complete Taj Mahal at the end of the working period. The Taj is a massive challenge. The more time that you spend looking at it, the more intricate and the more detailed it becomes.
At the top of their to-do list is one thing. Can they prove for the first time ever, using modern science, that the Taj Mahal is the perfectly symmetrical building it's famed to be? Or might this legend be a bit exaggerated?
Traditional two-dimensional drawings only tell part of the picture. What we're giving the archaeologist at the Taj Mahal is a complete three-dimensional data set.
And while the laser works its magic, Dr. Dixit accelerates the conservation program with data from a more traditional method. Stonemasonry. Practiced in India since ancient times, it includes workmanship ranging from rough stonework through to the most delicate carving.
नहीं मैनुअली ले जाएगा वो कैसे भी लेगा उसको लगाओगे.
Along the exterior of the Taj Mausoleum, flowers of stone are inlaid into the marbled walls. Many of these are precious and semi-precious stones from across Asia. They indicate the Mughal Empire's breadth of influence during the reign of Shah Jahan. Within the mausoleum, visitors walk through chambers and corridors lined with carved marble and inlaid coloured stone. Millions of admiring hands have touched the walls, causing damage and discoloration. The ASI maintain a highly skilled pool of stoneworkers called pachinka, who work a technique that originated in Florence, Italy in the 16th century. Known as pietra dura, numerous layers of coloured stone are individually shaped and placed into hollowed-out sections of marble. Craftsmen work with simple bow saws and hydrated abrasives to cut through blocks of marble inches thick. This work is agonizingly slow. And while the marble inlay work gets going, elsewhere at the Taj Mahal an equally skilled, if less glamorous job is underway. The colonnaded area in the outer enclosure is known as the glass house. Here, stonemasons of all levels will work together to replace a section of portico, which has been severely damaged over time. This work requires constant monitoring and adjustments to budget estimates.
ये सब रिप्लेस होने हैं. अच्छा ये बाद में करोगे ये लेबर आ जाएगा. चालू कर रहे हैं धीरे धीरे लेबर बढ़ा रहे हैं. आदमी कौन से आदमी हैं लेबर भाई? ये तो वही जो आते जा रहे हैं धीरे धीरे बढ़ा रहे हैं ना आदमी को. शुरू कर दिया बढ़ाना.
सर जी आपका फर्स्ट क्लास होगा बढ़िया देखने में अच्छा लगता है और बड़ा अच्छा इसका वो है इसका थोड़ी इसकी पॉइंटिंग अगर वो ढंग से हो जाती है.
Outside the complex, a specially chosen team carves individual slabs and the tiles that make up most of the paved surfaces around the monument. These stonemasons follow a tradition of artisans who've worked for generations, replacing the sandstone carvings of the Taj Mahal. using techniques that have remained unchanged since Mughal times. The sedimentary rock is brittle and the work takes skill and plenty of patience. At the glasshouse area, centuries of wear and tear have resulted in some sections crumbling to an unsightly level. Occasionally, a carver gets talent spotted and is offered the opportunity to develop their skills to a higher level. Ramprakash has been with the Archaeological Survey of India for 16 years. His skill with the chisel has taken years to hone. As with all great craftsmen, much depends on preparation.
पहले पत्थर प्लान किया जाता है, जैसे हमको कहीं पे बनाना उस जगह की नाप तो लेके पत्थर प्लान किया जाएगा। इसके बाद में फिर ये बॉर्डर बनेगा, बॉर्डर बना के फिर इसका हौद बनाया जाता है, हौद बना के फिर हम लोग फरमा काटते हैं, तो फरमा फिर इस पर रखा जाता है। फिर इस पर कलर बनाया जाता है। कलर से क्या होता है कि इसकी जो डिज़ाइन है ना वो निकल के तैयार हो जाती है।
Iron oxide is used as the staining powder that's dusted through the stencil.
इस ऐसे करके ये काम बन जाता है।
The patterns are carved out of a single block of stone, and it takes 4 days to create each floral design. The entire process takes at least a month. Time is a luxury the ASI can ill afford with their fast-approaching deadline. But Ramprakash's work cannot be rushed. While he works his magic, Dr. Dixit has to complete his inspection tour with his deputy, Mr. Kulsharesht.
These floor pieces
Have been taken.
replaced.
Replaced, have been complete.
Completed.
Because the Rashtrapati game is coming nearer.
Yeah.
So
Finishing touch रह गया है इसका।
so we should try to remove this work immediately.
And as the stonemasons proceed apace, over at the ASI's horticulture department, pressure is mounting too. Dr. Habir Singh is in charge of all the gardens at India's World Heritage Sites. He's called a meeting to discuss the accelerated planting schedule being arranged at the Taj Mahal ahead of the Commonwealth Games.
अभी आपका जो ओकेजन आ रहा है कॉमनवेल्थ आ रहा है जी, कॉमनवेल्थ के लिए आप कोई अलग से तैयारी कर रहे हैं?
हाँ सर, अब जैसे ये जो हम एज यूजुअल विंटर सीलिंग्स लगाते थे अक्टूबर में, इसकी हम जल्दी सोइंग करेंगे ताकि अक्टूबर तक हमें फ्लावरिंग ताजमहल और आगरा के जितने मॉन्यूमेंट्स हैं, जितने भी डेलीगेट्स आएंगे, टूरिस्ट आएंगे, वो सब उसमें उसका ब्यूटीफाई लगेगा। सेकेंडली जब ये गुलाब की जो हम रोजेज बडिंग करते थे वो भी हम थोड़ा सा अर्ली कर लेंगे ताकि अक्टूबर तक हमको उसमें फ्लावरिंग शुरू हो जाए।
Just as the Taj Mahal's gardeners are getting pushed to the limit, they're about to be granted their most fervent wish. With no warning, monsoon clouds have gathered over the mausoleum, and the first drops of much-needed rain arrive. In the forecourt of the Taj, visitors to the complex shelter under the banyan and neem trees that usually offer shade from the Indian sun. Over at the glass house, restoration work continues but has slowed down in the heavy downpour. The rain is welcomed by the gardeners and even by most visitors. But the change in weather will cause unwanted delays for others. Over at the mosque, dome cleaning with fuller's earth has had to stop. It's a complete washout. The Taj Mahal. With a month to go before visitor numbers are predicted to double as a result of the upcoming Commonwealth Games in Delhi, 3 teams of gardeners, stonemasons and chemists are racing to prepare their monument for the expected inundation. A neem tree that has stood for more than 20 years in the forecourt of the complex has been a casualty in the first rains of the monsoon. Hollowed out by a termite infestation, the tree was on its last legs. Strong winds in the heavy storm were its final undoing. In a region where summer temperatures can climb to 50 degrees Celsius, the trees in the gardens and courtyards offer much-needed shade for the weary visitor. For some horticulture department workers, a loss like this is deeply felt.
जैसे कि ये पेड़ है, हम इसको बच्चे की तरह पालते हैं। जैसे बच्चे को मान लीजिए, जिसको तो हम ये मुंह से मांग नहीं सकता, बच्चा तो मांग भी लेगा। हम इसको खिलाएंगे पिलाएंगे तो हम ही देखेंगे इसको कि हाँ ये क्या चीज़ चाहिए, इसको खाद चाहिए या पानी चाहिए, इसको हम चीज़ ही देख सकते हैं। इसको मान लेंगे ये बताएगा नहीं हमें।
With orders to remove the tree as quickly as possible, the gardening staff gets some unexpected assistance from an enthusiastic onlooker. The neem tree will also be missed for another reason. Its oils are used for insect control. Such trees were prized throughout the life of the Taj Mahal. They greeted the first foreign colonists who began to arrive in 1757, following British General Robert Clive's victory near Calcutta. For over a century, Europeans were swept away by the Taj Mahal's decayed charms, hosting moonlit picnics and brass band concerts. The rest house beside the mausoleum was even rented out to honeymooners. Fortunately, the Taj Mahal did not have to suffer these indignities for long. Between 1900 and 1908, Lord Curzon, Viceroy of India, personally funded a £40,000 restoration, and it's never looked back. Today, the responsibility for its ongoing upkeep has transferred to the ASI, or Archaeological Survey of India, which has quite enough to deal with without dead trees falling over. Ever mindful of this is Dr. Dixit, who has to answer some tough questions posed by his boss, Dr. Siddiqui, the district's superintending archaeologist.
यहाँ जो कंजर्वेशन का हो रहा था अभी कुछ दिनों पहले, वो खत्म हो गया, कुछ अभी बाकी है?
खत्म हो गया था, आप रह गया तो उसको नेक्स्ट पे देखेंगे सर। क्राइम की आए थे और जो है ना सर, ये जो ब्लैक जो उन्होंने करा दिया।
नहीं, मैं ये मालूम करना चाह रहा अभी जो इसका एस्टिमेट था, तो वो ये जो गैप्स हैं, ये इसमें क्यों उन्होंने इंक्लूड किया था, कैसे रह गया?
ये सर ऐसा है कि या तो सर वो सब काम खत्म हो गया, या उन्होंने चार्ज के चक्कर में कि अच्छा वो भी रह गया सर, वो वाला वो देखिए
ये स्पॉट्स कैसे हैं?
ये सर जो मॉस्क का सर, ये स्काई।
अच्छा खैर, अभी जो आप एस्टिमेट तैयार कीजिए तो उसमें इस तरह के जैसे ये गैप रह गए हैं,
वो रह गया सर,
वो वहाँ देखिए उस जगह पे वो रह गए हैं, तो ये सारी की सारी चीज़ें अपने ठीक कर लीजिएगा, है ना?
While the inspection with Dr. Siddiqui has not gone as well as Dr. Dixit had hoped, the science department's fortunes have fared better. Over at the mosque dome, a lucky break in the wet weather means that Fuller's earth treatment can continue to its next phase. Covered in plastic for several days, the mud pack has dried slowly, allowing the clay to do its work of absorbing accumulated grime deposited over decades. The caked mud is dry brushed and then sponged off with pure distilled water. Salty tap or well water is never used, as this would undo some of the work of the Fuller's earth treatment. And at the end of the process, the marble gleams as it did 4 centuries before. Turning his attention to another part of the complex, Dr. Dixit is keen to see if high-tech expertise might help speed things up. So he checks in with surveyor Duncan Lees, who's moved from the main mausoleum area to the glass house.
We've done a lot of work inside the Taj Mahal area, in the courtyard, the main courtyard, and we've just started working out here on the colonnades here, the arcades here. But I've seen a lot of stonemasons working. What's the conservation work that you're doing at the moment?
Sir, actually, you know that the monument is 400 years.
Yeah.
So we are doing this conservation, as some stones are decaying.
Okay.
So we are making repair. So this work we are doing for last whole year we are doing. Because actually
Duncan's surveys have revealed findings that he's eager to share with Dr. Dixit.
Let's have a look. You want to have a seat? Okay, so what we have here is just one of the scan setups for the Taj Mahal. And the next thing we have to do really with the data is put all of the different positions together, and then we'll have a complete Taj Mahal, a complete data set for the Taj Mahal.
Duncan's scans are revealing intricate details about the Taj Mahal. Once processed, these measurements will even be able to prove once and for all whether the mausoleum is the symmetrical building of its legend. On a slightly smaller scale, with little more than a month to go before the Commonwealth Games, the restoration work at the Glass House has had to step up a pace. The team have zeroed in on a load-bearing pillar that started to disintegrate. In order to take out the pillar, the column's base is carefully knocked out first.
Red sandstone, this is known as sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks particularly layers के ऊपर depend करता है. तो by the physical weathering or by the chemical weathering, sometimes this stone is corroded. उसकी जो loading power कमज़ोर हो जाती है, तो उस समय हमको इसके मतलब कंजर्वेशन की ओर ध्यान देना पड़ता है.
The red sandstone arcades near the western gate housed a bazaar during Shah Jahan's reign. Centuries of extreme temperature variations and corrosion mean that this area too has been restored or replaced time and time again. Each step of this process has been replicated over hundreds of years by thousands of workers using techniques and tools little changed from the time of original construction. Little changed too is marble inlay, the other form of stonework so much in evidence at the Taj Mahal. Extraordinary skill is needed to grind thin pieces of coloured stone into various sizes and shapes before they fit together to form the image. The composition is fixed into a cavity with glue made from sugar, gum, lime and marble dust, and the juice of a fruit called the belgary. The recipe for this has been handed down through generations of craftsmen.
ये हैंडवर्क है, इसका कोई स्कूल नहीं होता है. ये क्या होता है कि एक बाप अपने बेटे को इसके बारे में जानकारी देता है, फिर वो मतलब प्रैक्टिकल करता है, तो उसी के अंदाज से ये काम जो है सदियों से चला आ रहा है.
And while this highly skilled craft proceeds apace, or at least as fast as it can, at the nurseries of the Taj Mahal, with only a month to go, transplanting is finally about to begin. Joining Sharma today is Mr. Agarwal, the head gardener. He's come over to examine the saplings ready for planting. Pomegranate and zapota saplings have been carefully chosen for transplanting. Fruit trees are thought to add life to the paradise garden, according to Persian principles of design. But for the ASI, the trees serve the more earthly function of creating a microclimate, reducing levels of sulfur and nitrogen dioxide that was harming the marble. Another good shower, as transplanting takes place, heralds a good growing season. Perhaps things are looking up for the horticulture department, and targets will be met in time for October and the Commonwealth Games. With the upcoming Commonwealth Games expected to draw unprecedented numbers of tourists, workers at the Taj Mahal have less than a month to finish a number of critical tasks. And with reports drifting in from Delhi that the facilities for the Games may be inadequate, it's critical to the ASI that the Taj Mahal live up to all expectations. But the chances of completing all their jobs are looking very slim. After several years of poor rains in Agra, the monsoon has arrived with a vengeance. The Yamuna River has swollen to levels not seen in over 2 decades. And once parched gardens are in danger of becoming swampland. Seedlings transplanted just days ago are the first casualty. A team from the horticulture department has been assigned to replace all the balsam plants.
ये क्यारी कुछ दिन पहले हमने लगाई थी, काफ़ी तेज बारिश होने की वजह से इन क्यारियों में पानी भर चुका था और जो पौधे थे छोटे छोटे वो ख़त्म हो गए, इसलिए ये दोबारा पौधा लगाया जा रहा है.
Chosen for their sweet scent, it's unclear if the new seedlings will suffer the same fate as their predecessors or take root in time for the flowers to bloom. Also facing the problem of too much water are the fruit tree saplings planted at the beginning of the monsoon. In the Taj Gardens, Mr. Sharma and head gardener Mr. Agarwal are getting to grips with the problem. But there's more trouble.
तो उसके लिए क्या
monkeys.
इसके लिए क्या करें?
और क्या परेशानी आती है बंदर वगैरह की? इसको
ज़्यादा परेशानी है
बंदर के लिए कुछ एक आदमी की ड्यूटी लगा दूं जहाँ पर
आदमी कहाँ से लगाए? 1 2 3 4 प्लॉटों में
अलग कर
फल वाले वैसे।
ये बात तो है।
With less than 2 weeks to go before the Commonwealth Games, plants doing poorly and garden pests everywhere, the gardeners are once again behind schedule. Meanwhile, over at the glass house, the step, painstakingly carved by Ramprakash, is finally complete, and there's a breathless scramble to install it. The stonemasons are under pressure to complete the work before the final cleanup. Two days to go before the deadline, and the maintenance staff have drained the tanks of the central fountains. Normally submerged surfaces are coated with a mixture of lime and copper sulfate. Without this chemical cocktail, the tanks would soon develop a slimy deposit of algae under the constant sunlight in these shallow pools. Cleaned once a fortnight, the fountains won't be treated again for the duration of the games. So the job today has to be extra thorough. With the deadline in sight, cleaning work on the smaller northernmost dome at the top of the mosque building is complete and cleared of scaffolding. Fully aware that the international spotlight will be on the Taj Mahal when the Commonwealth Games begin, it is, however, business as usual for the chemical team of the ASI. True to their philosophy of not allowing anything to interfere with their restoration efforts, attention has now been shifted to the largest dome on the mosque roof. The contrast between the recently cleaned dome and its larger, as yet untreated companion attests to the effectiveness of Fuller's Earth. N.K. Samatia, head of the chemical team, is thrilled with the result.
हाँ, हमको बहुत संतुष्टि है क्योंकि वो तो रिजल्ट देखने से एकदम पता लगता है जो ट्रीटेड पोर्शन है अनट्रीटेड पोर्शन है उन दोनों के बीच में जो डिफरेंस है उसकी जो ओरिजिनल ब्यूटी है ओरिजिनल सरफेस है ओरिजिनल टेक्सचर है उसको हम लोगों ने मड पैक ट्रीटमेंट से अचीव किया है उसको आपको देख करके एकदम ऐसे मतलब एक थ्रिलिंग होती है जो काम अच्छा हुआ है उसको देख के एक थ्रिल होती है आदमी के अंदर और स्पेशली हम लोगों को तो होती क्योंकि हम लोग तो उससे डायरेक्टली जुड़े हुए हैं.
The ASI's use of Fuller's Earth on the Taj Mahal's domes for the first time ever has been a resounding success. And there's more good news. Duncan Lees has completed analysis of his data and can now prove scientifically for the first time ever that the Taj Mahal dome is symmetrical to within 2 centimetres. The laser-guided measurements have also revealed that at no point does the monument deviate from perfection by more than 3.5 centimetres. On top of this, Duncan has discovered that all the minarets tilt away from the dome by less than half a degree. Built almost 400 years ago, its work has achieved incredible accuracy with traditional tools. A tomb so carefully constructed that after 4 centuries it has barely shifted. At dusk, in the northeast tower, with a full view of the perfect mausoleum, a final check of the instruments is carried out by a science department technician. The air pollution monitoring lab is manned through the night as the ASI continues its battle against the damaging effects of pollution on this treasured monument. In the gardens, guards begin the nightly job of clearing out the stragglers. No stone is left unturned. They can't risk an overnight stowaway. As the early winter sun rises over the Taj Mahal, the gardens of the mausoleum are in full bloom. Balsam plants and coxcombs, painstakingly brought back to life after the heaviest monsoon in decades, bring life to the tomb gardens. For Mr. Sharma and his team at the Kane Alam Nursery, simple praise is reward enough.
अच्छा लगता है लोगों के कमेंट्स भी सुनने को मिलते हैं जैसे साइलेंटली चलो वो लोग बात कह रहे हैं गार्डन इज़ ब्यूटीफुल मॉन्यूमेंट अच्छा है तो अपने आप को अच्छा लगता है कि किसी ने लोग बात तारीफ वर्ड के कहाँ से आते हैं लोग बात सब तारीफ करके जाते हैं तो अपने आप भी अच्छा लगता है हम प्राउड करते हैं अपनी.
At the glasshouse area, the pandemonium seen just days before has given way to neat galleries that look as though they've been undisturbed for centuries. Crowds of visitors are oblivious to all the hard work that's gone into restoring the arcades. And that's just how Dr. Dixit prefers it.
लोगों को ये महसूस नहीं हुआ है कि ये पिलर्स में कुछ कंजर्वेशन का काम किया गया है, यानी उनको ये लगा कि ये चीज़ जैसा पहला है वैसे ही अब बनी हुई है, तो मैचिंग टू द ओरिजिनल ये हमारी मेहनत का एक रिजल्ट है.
The verdict comes from a Scottish visitor from the host city of the next Commonwealth Games, Glasgow.
When I saw it from the entry gate, I was like, it still looks like it's a photograph. It doesn't look real. It's so perfect. How could someone build something like this and it's still standing today?
It's an amazing, absolutely incredible structure.
It's wow.
No, it's better. It's better. You have the feelings here.
It's huge and it's simply gorgeous because first of all, which knocks you off your shoes is the symmetry. And of course the sunset, which is also changing the light of the Taj. And it's just the thing you have to see once in your lifetime at least.
It's the world's most famous clock. It's just turned 150. But with problems ranging from an aging mechanism to constant attack by pigeons to a rather worrying tilt, will Big Ben make it to the next century? At 150, the challenge for this icon's caretakers is to keep Big Ben standing and in perfect working order for the next 150 years. The stonework faces constant threat from pollutants. Marauding birds make unrelenting work for specialist glaziers. And construction work nearby has undermined its very foundations. With a clock mechanism that's older than any living human being, making sure Big Ben stays upright, clean, and in perfect time is no mean feat. For the first time on television, we'll go behind the scenes at Big Ben, following the specialist crews in their daily struggle to keep the clock tower up and running, and prepare Big Ben for Remembrance Sunday, honouring Britain's war dead, when all eyes and ears will be on the Great Clock Tower. Big Ben is one of the most recognised landmarks in the world, but it's cared for by just a handful of professionals. From metalworkers.
Wherever you are on the planet, if you hear the chimes of Big Ben, you don't just say, "Ah yes, bells." You say, "Ah yes, Big Ben."
To glaziers.
I've been working on the clock face of Big Ben for the last 20 years, I think. It's a privilege to do this work.
And three wise men whose job it is to keep the great clock running smoothly and accurately. Ian Westworth, Paul Robeson and Hugh Smith are the clockmakers who share the responsibility of looking after the great clock. They're based in the workshop deep in the bowels of the Houses of Parliament, and they just love clocks.
I started an apprenticeship straight from school. I worked on clocks and watches to start with, and I've been doing it for all my working life, over 30 years. Even when I was doing watches, I always enjoyed doing clocks a lot more as a hobby, and particularly English clocks. I like English clocks. English clocks are nice and heavy and robust, and you can work on them.
I think I've always been interested in machines and small machines, motorbikes, cars, that sort of thing. When I'd actually left college, I then specialised in turret clocks, big church clocks. And then when the opportunity came to work on the Great Clock of Westminster, or Big Ben, obviously it's an opportunity too good to miss.
Paul, Hugh and Ian are responsible for around 1,500 smaller clocks all over the Palace of Westminster. At the crack of dawn, they begin their mammoth round of clock winding. They have to be done before the parliamentary staff arrive for work.
We have about 400 mechanical clocks. So what we do every day, we come in, we do about 100 mechanical clocks. We do little sections throughout the whole building. We've done the Lords today. Yesterday we'll have done the Commons, upper committee corridors and stuff like this. So each area we do on a set specific day, otherwise the clocks will all stop.
These days, only about a third of the 1,500 clocks in Westminster are still mechanical. The craftsmanship of these men is gradually becoming a lost art. Once the clock winding inside the palace is over, the three make their way to the granddaddy of clocks. Big Ben's clock mechanism sits 58 metres above the streets of London. When the clock tower was built in the 1850s, lift technology was very new and not able to cope with a building so high. So 3 times a week, the clockmakers have to make their way to the top, as their predecessors did. They take the stairs, all 334 of them.
That's 9,000 metres a year. So we've done, it's looking at 6, 7, 8 Everest trips. But it doesn't get any easier. I assure you, it doesn't get any easier.
The first week I started, we were doing maintenance on the clock, and I came up and down 10 times in one day.
The man who was here before us, and he says the first 20 years are the worst, followed by the second 20. So we've got a long way to go yet before we're in that sort of row.
This is the mechanism that drove the heart of the British Empire. But this is not Big Ben. The term Big Ben refers to the hour bell itself. No one knows for sure how the bell got its nickname. The most likely theory is that it's an affectionate tribute to MP Sir Benjamin Hall, who supervised the installation of the original bell. Big Ben weighs over 13,500 kilos and is more than 2 meters tall. It's surrounded by 4 quarter bells, and when the hour is struck, they play a short extract from Handel's Messiah. With Big Ben's face, body and heart cared for by their specialist teams, back down on the ground is Principal Surveyor John Prue. His job is to keep the clock tower standing. But it's not as simple as it seems. Because the site on which the palace now stands was not always on firm ground. In fact, it was once an island in the Thames.
The clock tower is located in an area, we believe, probably of a mix of materials with softer underlying silts and estuarine deposits. The main factor causing the tilt of the tower is the underlying nature of the geology on which the tower was constructed. And you have some very soft material on the edge of the tower, which is more compressible than on the other side. And so that is what is causing the tower gently to lean over.
An official document drawn up during the tower's construction shows that it was starting to lean even while it was being built.
Here, the movement was nowhere near as much as Pisa, but they did notice there had been some movement because they started getting some cracks. And since then, it's been kept monitored at various stages in its life, but most notably in the last 10 or so years.
The graph shows a steady increase in the lean of the tower up until the 1990s, when it appeared to settle down. Then in 2003, for reasons unknown, there was a sudden spike in the readings. Since then, it seems to have stabilized. But this increasing angle could have severe consequences.
As the tower does lean over, it puts more load on one side than the other, and clearly if that becomes too excessive, then the stone would start to crumble.
John Prue is planning a series of tests to see whether Big Ben's tilt is likely to become critical. But he has to find this out before it actually happens, or Big Ben may not make it through the next 150 years. At London's Big Ben, a small but dedicated team are making sure that a tilt and aging parts don't hamper its future. This hasn't always been an easy task. The Palace of Westminster sits on the north side of the River Thames and is dominated by two towers, the Great Clock Tower and the Victoria Tower, which is home to thousands of Acts of Parliament dating back hundreds of years.
I'm in the Acts Room of the Parliamentary Archives at the Palace of Westminster, and these acts on rolled parchment go back to the time of Henry VII in the late 15th century.
There's been a royal building on this site since the 11th century. It was used as a royal residence as well as a centre for government. But in 1834, disaster struck.
A disastrous fire took hold of the Palace of Westminster, and about 2/3 of the old buildings were destroyed. It was due to the overheating of a boiler underneath the House of Lords chamber. It was necessary then to have a competition, and 97 entrants put forward their designs, but one stood out for its clarity of plan and its beautiful detail, and that was by Charles Barry.
Barry's original design didn't feature a clock tower, but a few months after winning, he had an idea.
It was only after a while that he revised his designs and a clock tower was introduced.
Barry designed the clock tower to be an elegant structure, enhancing the palace and securing its place as the nerve centre of the British Empire. The mid-19th century was a scientific golden age, but up until 1833, there was no standard time reference across the whole of England.
We had different time zones across the country from west to east, with the west, say Plymouth, was 16 minutes behind London because each town would just use the rising and setting of the sun to measure its clocks. This, with the faster communications such as the railways and the electric telegraph, was not convenient because if you had to timetable a railway, you had to have one time right across the country.
The new clock would broadcast Greenwich Mean Time, and the rest of the world would take its lead. It had to be incredibly accurate. The Astronomer Royal insisted that the great clock for Westminster be accurate to within 1 second a day, a feat thought to be impossible for an outdoor clock exposed to the elements.
One of the big problems with turret clocks are that the size of the hands get affected by wind, basically. The wind comes along, our minute hands are 14 feet long.
But an amateur clockmaker called Edmund Dennison was convinced he could solve the problem. Working with Edward Dent, who'd been commissioned to build the clock, he came up with an ingenious solution to make the new clock windproof.
When they built the clock was ready, but the tower wasn't. So it sat in Dent's workshop for nearly 5 years, and they had time to experiment on it. And one of the things that they experimented with was this double three-legged gravity escapement.
Dennison's ingenious design was for a self-propelled mechanism with two weighted arms that would effectively push the pendulum from side to side at a constant speed. It meant that the clock would keep perfect time, whatever the weather.
It's fantastic because none of the energy that hits the hands comes back and affects the pendulum, and the pendulum is the timekeeping bit, and it is groundbreaking.
The clock is divided into 3 sections known as trains. In the middle is the device that operates the hands of the clock and triggers the bell mechanisms. On the right is the chiming train for the quarter bells, and on the left is the train for the hour mechanism that strikes Big Ben itself. All three trains are powered by gravity, with a weight unwinding a wire wrapped round a large barrel. To ensure that the pendulum is protected from vibration and other external forces, a large part of it swings in a deep pit made of cast iron. The pendulum itself is a zinc rod in an iron tube, which compensates for temperature changes. All this has secured Big Ben's reputation as the most accurate four-face chiming clock the world has ever seen. But how do they know what time to set it? The answer: they do what everyone else in the UK does. They phone the speaking clock. At 10 minutes to the hour precisely, Paul starts a stopwatch on the third pip.
We phone the speaking clock at 10:02. I start the stopwatch exactly 10:02. We should come up here and I watch the hammer hit the bell on the first stroke of the hour. That is the exact o'clock. It's 0.3 of a second out, so with a bit of luck, no complaints today.
And should the clock be running fast or slow, there's a rather old-fashioned but time-honoured way of adjusting it.
If we need to make any adjustments, if we do the time check and the clock is running a little bit slow, it's not like a conventional clock where we can just move the hand on a little bit, or like your watch, you reset your watch. So if the clock is losing a bit, the way to get it back onto time is to speed the clock up. The pendulum is swinging every 2 seconds. So what we have is this tray up near the top of the pendulum, and there's various weights on here, but amongst the weights are pre-decimal pennies. And by adding one of these pennies, what you're actually doing is moving the centre of gravity up. So you're effectively shortening the pendulum. So by adding one of these pre-decimal pennies, we're actually speeding the clock up by 2/5 of a second a day. We take one off, we slow it down by 2/5 of a second a day, and that's the way we get the clock back on time.
While tiny adjustments are being made to the clock's beating heart, its face is having a makeover. Tony McCarty is a specialist glazier with a head for heights.
I'm just removing the old putty that holds the glass in. And once I've done that, I'll then take a template, a paper template of the shape of the glass before I remove it. It's broken, so I won't have no record of the size. What people forget is that behind this pane of glass, although it's a hard cast iron frame, you've got these very delicate capping pieces. So if you don't remove this carefully enough, you can damage the external face very easily.
In order to replace the capping pieces, Tony will require some help from a pair of specialist abseilers, as the only way to reach them is to be suspended in the air off the side of the tower.
I get a bit nervous, excitedly nervous, I suppose, on the morning.
Head down, back towards me.
I've been working on the clock face of Big Ben for the last 20 years, I think.
Yeah, well, this got to come out, hasn't it?
Yeah. I've only had toast today. One slice of toast this morning. And my last cup of tea.
It's not your last cup of tea, it's the last one you drank.
That's right. I'm getting a bit dramatic now. I think that should be okay.
Stand where you are for the moment.
Yeah.
What we're going to do with that is get that out of the way. Now what I'm going to do is, as you're going over the edge, I'm going to gradually start feeding this down.
Yeah.
Until it's at a point where you and Dave are happy.
Glass breaks or becomes dislodged by either vibration from the clock, vibration from the road, if rain gets driven into various cracks and crevices and freezes during the winter, it expands, It can fracture the glass and push it off, and heat from the sun can cause the glass to fracture.
That's it in?
Yeah.
Yeah. How about putting them in your crow, Dave, with your calcer?
This major operation is to replace a capping piece. These are the glass coverings which seal the cast iron skeleton of the clock face.
This is white fluorescent glass. It's called pot white. It's white all the way through. It's a classic glass. It's used historically in most clock faces throughout Great Britain. It diffuses any objects behind the lights. So when you look from downstairs, you don't see the light bulbs that illuminate the clock.
Tony has replaced the broken glass, but that's the easy part. The hard part is getting back up.
Yeah, I will do. I've finished with that now.
Watch that head. You still have to be mindful, particularly where your feet are. And when you're ascending, you tend to be looking up. And so you still have to really concentrate on where your feet are. Historic buildings like this, you can't afford to damage them. And that's, whereas normally you'd be able to just climb up without too much worry. You have to be really careful about where you place your feet and you don't cause any damage. And I think that is the issue, up and down, but probably more up. Let me know when you're ready and I'll pull you through.
I'm ready.
Absolutely cracking.
That's it. Absolutely time, that was, wasn't it?
Look at that.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, well done, son. Well done, that man.
Thank you, Paul.
You've done well.
Thank you very much.
Big Ben's face is back to its impeccable best. But it's not just the elements that constantly threaten to give it a black eye.
I heard that a pigeon flew into the glass once, but I don't know whether that's an old wives' tale or not, but I think that can cause a problem if it's a very big pigeon.
Pigeons and gulls are the scourge of London's buildings. Not only are they flying bricks, but their corrosive droppings eat away at the stonework and disfigure the elegant facades. But while the majority of London's buildings resort to ugly spikes or nets to keep the birds at bay, the Palace of Westminster has a much cleaner, more efficient process. Angela and her husband Mark are part of Parliament's pest control team. The other members of the team are 6 Harris hawks. Their job to keep pigeons and gulls away from the palace.
The biggest problem is guano, and the problem with that is it's quite acidic. It will actually eat into the fabric of the building. And this is a building it would be quite difficult to replace. This is Electra, but we fly her out here quite often because she's so big. She's actually got the size and weight to really, really, really worry the gulls. They're warning all their friends and relations that there's a predator in the area so that they can all take to the skies and be safe. They want to keep above him, they want to keep away from the toughest kid on the block. Our children name the birds. So this one's Electra. We also have Angel, who is named after Angel from Buffy the Vampire Slayer because we had a vampire theme. Yeah, his brother is Blade. So I'm this far away from having a hawk called Spider-Man.
For the Harris hawk, the goal is unrelenting. Keep the birds away from Big Ben.
It's a deterrence, but it's a deterrent system that doesn't make any awful noises. By definition, very green. We don't leave anything behind. If you put nets or spikes up, you ruin the look of a building. Once we take the hawk away, the building's exactly the way it should be. Because he's slower than the pigeons and the gulls that we get here, though he looks scary, we don't catch anything. So we're keeping them away in the gentlest way possible.
On the 29th of April, the unthinkable happened. Big Ben went wrong. The clockmakers had to carry out emergency repair work in the dead of night. The 5th of August, 1976. A 4-ton weight came crashing down inside the clock tower. It broke the entire mechanism and brought the clock to a standstill. After more than 100 years of service, the fly fans regulating speed wore out, causing the cable to unravel out of control. It looked like a bomb had gone off. After a messy repair job, the search was on to find a way to make sure this never happened again. Enter the National Physics Laboratory, where a crack team of scientists worked away at the problem until they came up with an ingenious solution.
If the clock speeds up more than 50% of its normal running speed, the balls on those ramps are thrown out. They engage in this outside drum here, and that operates 2 brake arms which clamp onto the outside of this original drum, I think it will. So it acts like a car caliper brake.
From that day to this, the emergency brake has acted as a safety valve, stopping the mechanism that strikes Big Ben if it's running too fast before it can cause any major damage. Now, this emergency brake has kicked in, and the team has to find out what set it off. To do this, they need to stop the hour strike without too many people noticing. So they wait until after Big Ben has struck midnight. The plan is to complete the work before the clock chimes 1. The team is spearheaded by Palace maintenance manager Mike McCann. Originally a marine engineer, he's known as the keeper of the Great Clock. It's a job title that's been passed down from generation to generation.
You see the ball bearings here, we're worried in case they may get damaged. And basically what happens is the faster it runs, the faster these ball bearings are flung up this incline. When they reach the top, they engage the brake, which stops the actual drum from rotating. But when they do that, they can get damaged. So you will be looking for any damage to those ball bearings in particular.
As soon as the 12th bong chimes, the team gets to work. First, the weight driving the mechanism must be lowered to take all the strain off the cable. Paul and an apprentice clockmaker head down to the base of the tower to oversee this procedure before Ian and Hugh can strip the clock.
We're now at the bottom of the weight shaft. Yeah, about 6 foot in. That's it, you're on the bags.
Once the weight is safely settled on the sandbags, Ian and Hugh remove the brake mechanism.
Thank you.
Things are taking longer than anticipated. The team have missed the 1 o'clock chime. They'll have to stay as long as it takes and work through the night if necessary to get the bongs back into Big Ben. Having sounded over 6 million bongs since its creation, Big Ben is rarely taken out of action. But the chime we hear today is not the same as it's always been. Because this is not the original Big Ben. On the 6th of August, 1856, the furnaces were fired up by John Warner and Sons at Cripplegate at their foundry in Stockton-on-Tees. Big Ben Mark I was created. Transported by sea to London, it was taken across Westminster Bridge on a carriage pulled by 16 white horses. Huge crowds gathered on the streets to cheer the arrival of London's most famous new citizen.
It was taken into New Palace Yard, where it was tested over a period of time. Denison, who had been instrumental in designing the clock and also the bells, wanted to provide the biggest sound from the hour bell. So he increased the size of the hammer whilst it was being tested. Unfortunately, he increased it too much, and a large crack appeared in the bell, rendering it useless. It had to be broken up, and the metal was recast, this time by Mears Foundry on the Whitechapel Road, a firm which still exists today.
The Whitechapel Bell Foundry is the oldest manufacturing company in the country. Alan Hughes, the master founder at Whitechapel, has worked here for over 40 years.
We have always claimed that the Whitechapel Foundry was established in 1570, and certainly we have clear evidence that we go back that far. But more recently, research suggests that perhaps we were more likely established in 1420, which of course is another 150 years. This may or may not be so. So we still, as it were, hang on to our known date of 1570.
The foundry was commissioned to cast a replacement bell almost 3 meters wide at the mouth.
This is our sales ledger from the period covering 1858, which details the provision of Big Ben, and we have an entry here dated the 28th of May 1858, made out to the Right Honourable, the Commissioners of Her Majesty's Works and Public Buildings, and it simply says 2A bell weighing 13 tons, 10 hundredweights, 3/4, 15 pounds, which with new metal we would have sold then at £2,401, 16 shillings and 9pence. But of course what we actually did in 1858 was to recast the first bell, which was broken during testing. So the metal from the first bell was brought back here as a credit, as it were, for casting the new bell. So we have, by credit of the old bell, which was weighed in at 15 tons, 13 hundredweights, 2/4 and 19 pounds, that worked out as a metal credit at then £1,829, 14 and 9pence.
As they didn't know how much metal a bell this size would need, they melted down 20,000 kilos of bell metal, a mixture of 77% copper and 23% zinc, at temperatures of around 1200 degrees centigrade. The process took over 12 hours. Big Ben, as this second bell was also nicknamed, was cast on Saturday, April the 10th, 1858.
That is the moulding gauge that was used for making the mould into which Big Ben was cast. And of course it's unique, it has only ever been used the one time.
This technique used to cast Big Ben is still the one that's followed today.
Big Ben is the largest bell ever cast in this foundry, and of course it was cast below ground floor level. In the mid-19th century there were considerable practical difficulties in lifting metal. 13.5 tons of liquid metal, there was no easy way of lifting that. So the whole of the mould was buried beneath the level of the ground. The metal was run through channels cut in the ground, so the metal simply ran by gravity along channels down into the mould. So the mould filled entirely by gravity.
Big Ben ended up weighing over 13,500 kilos. It took over 3 weeks to cool down and was then the largest bell in England.
So that was brought by the same means, the same horses brought it into New Palace Yard. It was tested and it was found to be sound.
Although it was 2,500 kilos lighter, the new bell was too large to fit up the clock tower's shaft vertically, so it was turned on its side. It took 30 hours to winch it up to the belfry in October 1858. The 4 quarter bells were already in place.
It was installed and it worked. It was connected up to the clock. It was satisfactory for several weeks until that too cracked in 2 places. These were smaller cracks, and you can still see these cracks today. The accusations flew, of course, between Denison and the founders. Denison said that it hadn't been cast properly, and the founders said that he'd used far too large a hammer on it again while it was in the tower. the Astronomer Royal suggested the solution, which was to turn the bell slightly so that the hammer wouldn't hit on the cracked parts, and also to reduce the hammer head so that wouldn't cause any more difficulties in the future. And from that day onwards, it has worked in conjunction with the four-quarter bells.
Back in the clock room, 83 minutes have passed since the stopping of the strike mechanism. Westminster clockmaker Hugh Smith and his team's investigation into what triggered the emergency brake has drawn a blank. Instead, they must concentrate on resetting it to prevent any future accidents.
Yeah, look. It's not going to catch, is it? It's not going to stop it operating.
I reckon we should go for carbon fibre rebuild.
Can't beat the old-fashioned cast iron.
Once Hugh has given it a good clean-up, it's time for its reinstallation into the clock. But they have to get a move on. Big Ben has been silent for over 2 hours.
You've got the Allen curve,
Don't push it all the way in yet.
You're going to lift the pin off for now.
What we're going to do now, we're going to use the automatic winder to wind the heavy weights back up halfway up the tower or so, and then we'll have to release the train on the strike, which is the part we've just been working on, to get it to strike the right time, which will be 3 a.m. At the moment, it wants to strike 9 o'clock. The other side will start in 20 seconds. So the quarters will play, they'll play 16 notes, then there's a pause of 7 seconds, and then hopefully this end will go. And not too bad. It went well. Everything that we tried doing has worked, and as you just heard, it was all successful.
Well done, lads.
Another job done.
London's signature sound has been safely restored, but a much more crucial problem remains. Is the lean of Big Ben within safe limits? Throughout its life, Big Ben has witnessed huge changes to its surroundings. From the construction of monumental newcomer, the London Eye, across the river, to Portcullis House just next door. But the most significant threat to the Great Clock Tower has come from beneath its very foundations. In 1994, construction began on 11 new tunnels for the London Underground's Jubilee Line. A 38-metre hole was dug for a new station just metres from Big Ben.
The Jubilee Line tunnels are very deep below the surface and below the level of the foundations of the clock tower, and the nature of that is that there'll be a lot of settlement predicted as a result of the construction of the tunnels, and therefore there was great concern on the effect that that would have on the clock tower.
By 1994, the clock tower was already leaning by 148 millimetres. The invasive tunnelling threatened to add another 100 millimetres to the tilt. This would cause irreparable damage.
the tilt of Big Ben would have been of sufficient magnitude that it would have caused some unacceptable cracking between Big Ben and the Palace of Westminster.
So Professor Mayer and his colleagues came up with an ingenious solution to counteract the subsidence. It's called compensation grouting.
Compensation grouting involves the drilling of usually horizontal steel tubes in the ground deep below the foundations of the building or structure to be protected. Engineers can specify very precise and very accurate amounts of cement or liquid cement to be injected from holes in those tubes. That injection controls the movement of the ground and therefore controls the movement of the structure above it.
With the grouting in place, there was minimal disruption to the tower. Today, the total tilt of Big Ben is believed to be 180 millimeters. It's just within safe limits. A tilt of 200 millimeters could tip it over to critical, so the measurements are constantly verified. Duncan Lees is a surveyor specializing in laser measurement. With 25 years' experience, Duncan has used this technique on a variety of applications, from large-scale construction to creating special effects for Hollywood blockbusters. He's been brought in to get an exact measurement of the tower's tilt and look for any worrying trends.
How's it going?
Very well, thank you. How's
Good, good. Yeah, not too bad. We've had a good day. The laser's been picking up a lot of information, even right at the very top of the tower. But a structure of this age must have been affected over time by a number of different events.
One of the things we have found is that the Thames itself causes the tower to move backwards and forwards, which you may have picked up with your data readings.
you mean in a day with tide coming in and out?
That's right. You've got 2 tides a day, and it moves backwards and forwards with each of those tides.
What sort of range of movement do you think that is?
We're talking about something that's pretty small, actually. We're talking about something less than a millimetre.
We're kind of verging on the limit of the distance that we can get good data from, but we're still getting a good density of points. And so I'm confident that when we put all of the different scans together, I'll be able to show you, a complete tower, and we'll be able to look then at whether the points that I've collected show any kind of deformation. But you're monitoring this kind of thing anyway, aren't you?
We are, yes, and it'd be interesting to see how your data compares to what we've measured ourselves.
Okay.
Duncan will take his laser readings back to his lab to process. The results could determine Big Ben's future. It's the end of October and time for Big Ben to change from British summertime back to GMT. To do this, the clock has to be stopped, and it's the perfect time for some routine maintenance. The whole operation is managed with military precision. At 21:03 precisely, the lights on the clock face are switched off. This allows the clock hands to be moved without drawing too much attention from the public. The clock hands are advanced to 12 midnight. Big Ben's clock is stopped and will be started up at exactly midnight GMT. This gives the team precisely 4 hours to carry out an inspection of the entire machinery. Enter Malcolm Nicol, a specialist who'll be carrying out a forensic inspection of the clock using a form of non-destructive testing.
Non-destructive testing is the testing of components without subjecting them to any sectioning or cutting or other mechanical preparation.
The mechanism that Malcolm will be applying his technique to is on the shaft of the fly fan, a part of vital importance to the clock itself.
Let's have a look here. It's hardly any signs of wear on them at all, you know.
After the fly fan has been dismantled, Malcolm has a brief window to carry out his investigation before the fly fan must be reinstalled.
This is a non-destructive technique called fluorescent magnetic particle testing. Effectively, what happens is we create a magnetic field across the surface of the component. And if there are any cracks which cross the lines of flux of the magnetic field, then the magnetic particles will be attracted to those defects. That's interesting.
Malcolm has spotted something he thinks could be a crack, potentially fatal for the mechanism.
Okay. Superficial corrosion.
But once he's looked closer, it turns out to be just a scratch.
We've got some superficial corrosion, but it's not a problem.
Once Malcolm gives the all clear, the fly fans are reinstalled.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now.
The clock will run for the next 2 hours without the hour strike or the quarter chimes. The team now have just under 2 hours to monitor the clock's accuracy and make any adjustments to get it within 1 second of the new time.
This is Paul Robeson in its natural environment. It's stroking a clock.
It is, and in a happy state of mind.
Yes.
And on a Saturday night.
We don't do it for the money.
We don't do it for the money.
Yeah.
The dial lights are switched back on. At 2 in the morning, the quarter bells sound the Westminster chimes. The great bell strikes the hour, and Big Ben returns to Greenwich Mean Time. And it's vital that time is right to within a fraction of a second. Because just 2 weeks later, Big Ben plays a central role in the timing of Remembrance Sunday. Big Ben's future hangs in the balance. Duncan Lees has done a complete laser survey of the Great Clock Tower to find out exactly how far it's leaning. A tilt of 200 millimeters or over would put it in danger of cracking. The results are now in.
The laser scanning clearly shows that Big Ben leans. It leans to the northwest and by a measurement of some 179, 180 millimeters from vertical. Now, this one-off measurement is no cause for concern. What we have to do in monitoring is to repeat the measurement exercise and see whether there is a trend to the movement. Now, a building of this importance and this stature, and with a lean of that much, it's crucial that the monitoring exercise is continued, and we can assess whether there is cause for concern in the way that Big Ben is moving and the way that the environment is affecting the clock tower.
Big Ben's future is safe for now. On the 11th hour, on the Sunday nearest to the 11th day of the 11th month each year, Big Ben tolls for those who lost their lives in war. This day is Remembrance Sunday. The whole operation is painstakingly planned. Big Ben has to strike at the exact moment that the field gun in Horse Guards Parade, 500 meters away, is fired in honor of the dead. As the sound from Big Ben has to travel further than that of the field gun, the gun must fire a fraction of a second after the bell. And this challenge falls to Captain Paul Greenwood and Sergeant Ryan Evans of the 10th Signal Regiment, 251 Signal Squadron.
I'm the London Operations Officer, looking after all the ceremonial events on the communications side, making sure that the communications and the time is correct. The importance of Big Ben for Remembrance Sunday is we take the timing for the whole parade, which the general public would see on television.
In the hour leading up to the 11 o'clock strike, Sergeant Evans provides time control points, coordinating and synchronizing the events on the ground, from the playing of music, the arrival of the Queen and dignitaries, to the firing of the field gun on Horse Guards Parade. In the final minute, Captain Greenwood takes over the commands.
60 seconds to go. Hello, 6-9, this is 6-1. 30 seconds to go. Seconds. Flag up. 15 seconds. Flag steady. Fire, fire, fire.
2 minutes silence begins at exactly 11 a.m. The silence represents the exact moment in 1918 when the guns of Europe fell silent. The great clock tower at the palaces of Westminster has become a national treasure, the iconic image of Britain. For the people who work behind the scenes to keep it alive and standing, there's no substitute.
What do you do for a living? I look after Big Ben. People just don't believe you. It becomes very addictive working on the great clock. But lots of people would say, oh, you must have the best job in the world. To be close, but it's a bit of an honour, really.
Well, I feel very privileged to be looking after it, yeah, definitely. If you'd have told me when I first started my apprenticeship that one day I'd be looking after Big Ben, I would never have believed you.
Big Ben has marked the highs and lows of the nation's history for over 150 years and looks set to ring the changes for centuries to come.